Thank you for being present today from the desk of the Executive Director at Back Bay Mission, and I am James Pennington. If you haven't been here before, really grateful that you're here today. Talk about a couple of things. I've had about a week of some real goodness lately. This past Wednesday, I left for Tennessee to go to the mountains of Tennessee, or the Cumberland Plateau, where we have Pleasant Hill Community Church, which is a United Church of Christ, and we also have a retirement community on the top of Cumberland there. And it was really a fascinating opportunity to share about our capital campaign, to share who and what we are at Back Bay Mission with a group of folks in Tennessee. The retirement area is called Uplands Village, and they've been supporters. They've actually been sending individuals down to Back Bay Mission as volunteers to do rehab work over the course of the last few years. In fact, I think this church has been connected to Back Bay for about 30 years. The thing that I found the most engaging was that when you come to our property here, we have this amazing bell that was a church bell that's kind of under a portico here, that has some history that's been moved from one place to another. They also had a very similar bell that was made years ago and had traveled to some UCC churches on the East Coast, United Church of Christ, and other places. And when the Congregationalists established a school and a medical clinic in this area of the Cumberland Mountains, or in the Cumberland Plateau, that bell was brought to that location. What I found interesting is our UCC, United Church of Christ, foremothers and forefathers, especially Dr. May, came because in the Cumberland Plateau, or the Cumberland Mountains, there was really no health care, and education was really poor. And so she came in the late 1800s to establish some medical care, and a bit before that they established a school for the residents of the area. Now, it's still not a very populated area, but the fascinating thing is that we had a very strong presence there in the middle 1800s and the late 1800s, and really throughout this entire time in the 19 and 20,000. So very, very grateful for the folks there and for the opportunity I had to share. The other thing that happened yesterday, which would have been Wednesday, was I had a chance to be at the Mississippi Public Health Association conference. I was invited to speak about homelessness, and I entitled the presentation, "The Myths on Homelessness and Poverty." The interesting thing was I didn't get to the second half because the 200 folks that were there from all around the state that were social workers and worked with public health were so engaged and so interested in the topic that I had more questions than I could really field. And we had a partner that was there that works with homelessness in 71 counties. Can you imagine that? 71 counties across Mississippi. So I invited her up to share a little bit of her story. But the interesting thing was there were so many interesting and deep questions, especially around this one particular question. Now mind you, these are caseworkers. These are individuals working in human services, and most of them are working with state public health department right in Mississippi. One of the major questions that individuals had that came up again and again in variations was, so why don't these homeless folks just get a job? There's lots of jobs. Well, I'd already explained one of the myths of homelessness is, why don't these people just get a job? But we talked then several times around the barriers to getting a job. If you've been homeless, you generally do not have a driver's license because you don't have a car, or it's lapsed, or you've lost it, or it's been stolen, or it's been misplaced. You probably don't have a birth certificate. You don't have any really ID, right? Picture ID. And you really can't get a house, you can't get an apartment, you can't get a job without identification confirming who you are and that you're legitimate to work. And so we talked about those barriers, talked about mental health barriers. If you have chronic mental health issues that are not medicated, and you're not medicated and you're not stabilized, it's going to be really hard to get a job, to hold a job, if you don't have clean clothing, if you don't have appropriate clothing, if you can't get a shower, all of these barriers to really getting gainful employment. And we had to go over that several times. And the strange thing was, albeit these people were asking questions because they really had concerns and they were legit questions, but from human service folks to say, why don't they just get a job, was kind of shocking to me, right? but yet it was really rich, and it was really a deep conversation. So I had a chance to present for about an hour and a half. And as I said, I got through the portion on the myths of homelessness, but not into the myths of poverty. But they are so interconnected. I had an opportunity to talk, and I followed up an individual who spoke from Oklahoma on bias in our culture and our own personal biases. And I really reflected a lot about my bias and populations that I am able to work with. And one of the biases on the sheet that she had us evaluate was, do we have a bias toward those who are homeless or those who are living in poverty? And so I kind of catapulted with that, and then shared a little bit about one of my very favorite authors who recently passed away, Bell Hooks, who says, it's not about race, but it's about class. Because in our bias, we also talked about race and racism and culture, and talked about how we have such a strong class system in this country. We kind of point to in India, right? We say, oh, they've got a caste system. Well, we have a very similar system, and it's very hard if you have a poverty mindset to get out of the poverty mindset and move to middle class or move to upper class, right? And then with our mindsets, there's different ways of looking at money, employment, and family, and material items in each one of those classes. So we had this fascinating discussion then with this group of 200 folks that were social workers and worked with the Mississippi Department of Health and Public Health about classism and class. And how do you change a poverty mindset? And several of these people grew up in poverty and talked about how they see things differently. They see money differently. It's hard to kind of get out of the poverty mindset. And so we talked about how that poverty mindset then connects with homelessness and the mindset of somebody who is homeless or somebody that's housed. So it was a really rich, deep conversation. And Hattiesburg, if anybody knows where Hattiesburg is at, it's about an hour and 15 minutes, about an hour, 20 minutes from here. It's the university, Southern Mississippi University. I think it's where you went, Kevin, right? Great school, a great community, a beautiful community, and this was held at the convention center there, which seriously was one of the nicest convention centers I've ever been at. In the back of the convention center, there's this gorgeous fountain, there's a beautiful lake, there were ducks, there were geese, there were bridges over the lake, a great opportunity during lunch just to kind of get out and walk and to be present. And the gift I was given for speaking is this incredibly beautiful art piece here that was made in Hattiesburg, and it is a bird, a beautiful bird that's on top of this piece of driftwood, which I found is a really beautiful gift that'll sit here on my desk and remind me to always look at nature, to respect nature, and to admire nature, and to love nature. And so that's kind of for my desk today. That's really what I wanted to share. And I'm excited. When you see this on Monday, this will have already happened, is that we're taking the staff on the shrimp boat today. Captain Mike, who is a friend of mine, he runs the shrimping tour here in town. He's given us a free gift of going on the shrimp tour together as staff to help us kind of reconnect with our roots, because Back Bay started working with fisher people, kind of like the folks in the mountain plateau going back to Pleasant Hill and to that area of Tennessee. They arrived to help with education and medical, very similar to Back Bay Mission. We worked with the fisher folk to provide medical care, to provide food, to provide clothing, to provide education and Sunday school. And so today we're going to have an opportunity this afternoon as the staff to go on that shrimping boat to kind of experience what it might be like for those early shrimping folks and to connect to our roots. So I'd encourage you during the course of the day, find opportunities to connect to your roots, to your history. Find opportunities to connect to people who may be experiencing homelessness or in poverty. Smile, let them know you care. Find an opportunity to connect to nature, as this beautiful artistic piece will help me to connect with nature. But find places to connect with your humanity, your divinity, and with nature, because I think we'll all be better off for it, especially as we find that we're extremely stressed out because of COVID, rearing its ugly head again, which has really never gone away, and also the price of gas, price of groceries, and the inflation we're experiencing, and a lot of this discussion around recession. So stay healthy, stay wise, and know that you are loved, by Back Bay Mission, and we appreciate you being a part of our programming and being a part of these videos. So thank you for joining us. And as always, support us. We're in the throes of our 100-year anniversary campaign. So feel free to support us in whatever way you can, or if that's prayer, if that's money, if that's with your thoughts and with your good intentions. So thank you for joining me today.